Did you know that a VA loan can be used by active duty military, veterans, and surviving spouses? Hi, so I'm Nicole Martinez with Strother, and I'm so excited you're joining me today because we're going to take a walk through everything you need to know about using your VA benefits to purchase a home. So let's start off with what is a VA loan and who can use it? A VA loan is a loan that is backed by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. It also helps lenders offer you better terms. So who qualifies for a VA loan? That's a good question. Active duty service members that have served at least 90 consecutive days, veterans that meet certain service requirements, surviving spouses of veterans, and also National Guard members and reserve members that have either served 6 years or 90 consecutive days of active duty. So how do you prove eligibility? You would actually need something called a certificate of eligibility, which is very easy to get. So your lender can really pull that for you in less than a day, or you can even go to your e-portal for your VA benefits and you're able to pull that as well. So now let's take a walk from beginning to closing. So that way you can kind of get an idea of what it's like to use your VA benefits to purchase a home. So step one, of course, is establishing a good relationship with a lender, one that you're going to stick with through the process, hopefully. And during that process, you're also going to be giving him all of the documentation that he needs, which is going to be a few things plus that certificate of eligibility that I had mentioned before. Step two is now we get to go searching for a house. Now this is where I get to work my magic. We're going to come up with a list of needs and wants. So that way that helps narrow down the search. Your lender is also going to give us a pre-approval amount. So that way that tells us what budget we're working within. Now, what I'm going to do as your agent also is while we're out viewing homes, I'm going to make sure these homes are meeting the criteria that they need to meet in order to be able to pass a VA appraisal, such as no chip paint and stuff like that. Now that don't necessarily mean that one we would have to forego that one. We would just probably have to put that in our offer that the seller must repair XYZ before we move forward. So step three is we finally get to put it in our offer. So you found the home that you love. It checks all of the boxes. Now we have to sit down and come up with a competitive offer. A competitive offer is going to consist of how much due diligence do you want to put in, how much earnest money you want to put in, and all of the above. Do you want to ask for closing costs and things of that nature? Now, every situation is different, so that's not a one-size-fits-all type of question. So we would go through that step by step together and devise a plan. All right, so step four, your offer has been accepted. Now we need to do our appraisals and our inspections. Now, the VA requires you, it's mandatory to have an appraisal done and a wood-destroying insect report. Both of them are mandatory. Your inspection is not mandatory, but it is a really good idea to have one. I highly encourage it just because an appraiser only goes so deep, an inspector is going to look through that home with a fine-tooth comb. Step five, we are in underwriting and we are looking for your final approval so that way we can make it onto that closing table. Now during this process, make sure you're staying in contact with your lender because you will probably need a lot of documentation. All right, so step six, we've made it to the closing table. Yay! So of course, before we actually go and sit at the closing table, the day before that, we're going to do something called our final walkthrough. On our final walkthrough, that's when we go through the home and we make sure it's in the same condition it was in when we first viewed it. Now, if all goes well during that final walkthrough, then we are going to make it to the closing table the next day. Now, the closing table looks different for every situation. So we're a military town. Sometimes our closings don't happen at a closing table. Sometimes our military members may still be in another state. They have to do something with a mobile notary where they sign in the state that they're in, and then it closes here in North Carolina. Okay, so you finally made it to the closing table. You've signed all your documents. Everything is great. So now what? Now, do you get possession of the home? No, not quite yet. So the misconception with that is everybody thinks that once you signed all your documentation and funding has happened, then you get the keys. Unfortunately, once the funding has happened, all the documents have been signed, now your attorney has to submit that paperwork to the Register of Deeds, so that way the deed is recorded in your name. Until that deed is recorded in your name, it's not your property. It's still the property of the seller. So we ask you to not enter that property until we call or text, or even if we're face to face, whatever the case may be, we let you know, hey, yay, congratulations, it is finally recorded in your name. Now you may take possession of the property. So that's the process in a nutshell, but there are some benefits to using a VA loan that a lot of people don't know. So one benefit is being able to purchase a home with zero down. That means no down payment. You don't have to put a down payment in order to avoid the PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. Conventional loans, we ask people to put a 20% down payment, so that way they don't have private mortgage insurance. If they don't put the 20% payment down, then they got that insurance every month to pay. Now with a VA loan, you don't have that. You don't have to worry about the insurance, and you also don't have to worry about a down payment. So another benefit is with VA loans, lenders are able to give us competitive rates. So conventional loan rates are a little bit higher than our VA loan rates and our FHA home rates. Another benefit is there are limits on closing costs. Now they do this so that way our VA members are not being overcharged. One other benefit is that a lot of people don't even know, your VA loan benefits can be used over and over and over. It's not a use once and it's done. No. So you could buy one home with your VA loan eligibility and even buy another one in that same duration before you even pay that mortgage off, or once you pay the mortgage off, you can use it again. So as long as you don't get a foreclosure on it, you can keep using it over and over and over. Speaking of foreclosures, now when you have a VA loan, the government is going to do everything they can to keep you from going into foreclosure. There's actually a dedicated team within the VA department that actually works daily to keep veterans from. Now let's talk about some common myths about using a VA loan. So myth number one is that using a VA loan takes too long to close. That is absolutely not true. Most VA loans can close just like conventional loans, anywhere from 30 to 45 days. And sellers have no problem accepting them because most sellers here in Fayetteville and surrounding areas, they're military too because we're a military town. Myth number two, I need perfect credit to qualify for a VA loan. That's absolutely incorrect. So lenders actually have the ability to set their minimum credit score when it comes to VA loans. Now that score normally ranges anywhere from 580 to 620, which is the lowest that your credit could be in order to qualify. But always, before you count yourself out, always check with a lender, okay? So myth number three is I have to be a combat veteran in order to qualify for a VA loan, right? No, you do not. So there are service requirements as far as your certificate of eligibility, but you do not have to be a combat veteran. You don't have to have ever had deployed or anything in order to qualify. The next myth is a VA appraisal will absolutely kill my bill. Now, this is the gray area, guys. Yes, VA appraisals are a little bit sticky in comparison to conventional loans. But me as your realtor, I'm going to be looking for the little details that we have to look for to make sure that the appraiser is not going to flag that property. Or if I already know that the appraiser is going to flag something, I'm going to put that in the offer to purchase for the seller to go ahead and fix that, being that we are using a VA loan. So we come prepared for that. So don't worry about that part. Now let's take a look at how we get pre-approved. So pre-approval is one of the most essential parts of buying a home. And that's because, first of all, it tells you what your spending limit is. And second of all, it lets sellers know that you're very serious about purchasing a home. So to get that pre-approval, your lender is going to ask you for some documentation. Number one, of course, like we talked about, is going to be your certificate of eligibility. You're also going to need some pay stubs, just showing how much you make. You're going to need to prove that you have some stable income. So we hope for at least 2 years of employment. If not, that's something to talk about with your lender. That doesn't necessarily knock you out of the loop. But these are some of the things that your lender is going to be looking at. They're also going to be looking at your debt to income ratio as well as your credit. So pre-approval generally takes anywhere from 1 to 3 days. It just really depends on the lender that you're working on and what documents they need and how fast you're able to get it to them. Now, once we get that pre-approval and we have your budget, we are ready to go home shopping. We're in a market right now that really requires a lot of strategy. Homes that are priced right, they're moving pretty fast. So here are a few tips that kind of position you for the win. Number one, let's get pre-approved, of course, like we already talked about. That gives you power and it gives you speed. That's something that you don't have to backtrack on. Say, oh, well, now I found the house that I love. Let's go back and get pre-approved. While you're going back and getting pre-approved, somebody else is putting in an offer. So let's know the difference between your must-haves and would like to have. Now, these two different lists, they will, by knowing that the items that you really, really need and the items that you really just want but don't necessarily need, that will help us navigate the inventory and help us move quicker. All right, so number 3, let's be flexible on closing. Sellers love it when we are able to work with them on time frames, because sometimes sellers, they're not able to move right away, or they might need to move like yesterday. So when we're able to move with them, then they love that. Your offer will definitely stand out if you're more flexible. And my last piece of advice is look at the whole picture, not just a home. That means look at the neighborhood, drive at different intervals during the daytime, at nighttime, and so on and so on. So that way you can get a feel for the entire community. Look at how long the commute from the home to base is. Also look at the schools. If you have children, you may need to know what schools are in that area. You want to look at the entire picture, including how hard would it be to resell this home should I need to? All right, guys, so we have covered a lot today, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch. Your service to our country means a great deal to me, and it's my honor to be able to serve you by helping you use your VA benefits. You can reach me at 910-587-0076. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of the above. Make sure you look me up so I can help you find your dream home and use your VA benefits to get that dream home. Bye, guys.